Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Page 10, our current affairs podcast. My name is Abbas. We are recording on the 10th of March 2023. With me in the studio for a change is our regular panelist, Meghnad.
Yes, hello. I'm in studio for a change.
And joining us from a very early morning in London is Azania Patel. Azania, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'll very quickly introduce Azania. So, Azania is a Rhodes Scholar who's joining us from London. She's an independent journalist who has written for The Economist. How is it going, Azania?
It is a very snowy morning today, so it's pretty cold, is what I'm gonna
Okay.
say. But yeah,
Complete
it's good to
opposite
be
of
here.
what it is in
In
Mumbai.
Bombay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bombay has the advantage of dust also, so
Yeah.
it's great.
You must be feeling at home,
Oh, yeah.
Meghnad.
I came from Delhi
I know.
and my lungs went into shock. Usually, what happens is when I go to Delhi, is when my lungs go
Yeah.
into shock. But this time it's the opposite. So I'm glad you have this air. Congrats. Delhi is better. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, I guess. All right, if you're listening to or watching Page 10 for the first time, this is our current affairs podcast where what happens is each panelist brings a piece of news that preferably happened sometime in the last week. They give a little lowdown on it and explainer, and then we have a healthy discussion about it and exchange our views. And this show is happening on the All About Now podcast feed and YouTube channel from IVM Podcast. There are also two other shows you can find on this feed. There's ELI 10, hosted by Meghnad, and there's also season 2 of How to Citizen has premiered recently. By the time this episode goes out on video, you would have already seen or can see 3 episodes of the new season of How to Citizen.
Yeah.
On the third episode, who do we have, Meghnad?
So on the third episode, we have Priyanka Chaturvedi.
Hmm.
Priyanka Chaturvedi, if you know, she's a Rajya Sabha MP from one of the Shiv Senas.
Yes.
So again, lots of confusion about kya ho raha hai Shiv Sena mein, etc. So we
Right.
spoke to her about that. Although I must say that the recording happened much before the Supreme Court hearing and all the
Right.
things happened, but still she gives some very interesting answers. And of course, the chapter was role of state government.
Right.
So that also is very interesting.
Hmm.
Also on ELI 10, we have Akar Patel this time
Oh, nice.
Oh,
on what is activism. So
Hmm.
you can hear that as well. We have lots of contents coming.
Yes.
Contents बहुत मिलने वाले तुमको. Yeah.
Yeah. In case you missed out on the first 2 episodes of How to Citizen, they feature Omar
Omar
Abdullah and
Abdullah
Anup Soni.
and Anup Soni.
Yeah.
Yes.
But let's get to the episode we're doing right now, which
Yes.
is page 10. And let's start with you, Azania. Azania, what do you have for us this week? Please let us know.
so this week I wanted to kind of go into like a more like sort of foreign correspondent-y story, which is about how foreign technology is very, very important in Ukraine's sort of war efforts. And I mean that's particularly interesting because when you see it, it's actually a pretty small country, right? So how is it kind of like making this entire war effort, and how is it using all these very, very cutting edge technologies? And the fact is that it is allowing itself to actually be used as sort of a trial ground for startup like technology.
Okay.
So what one of the earliest things that happened during last year when the sort of war was picking up was the President Zelensky. He went to these European technology conferences as a hologram, which is also very interesting
Okay.
and very
Yeah.
dramatic and kind of makes an impression.
Yeah.
And he was like, we need your help. Can you give us, as much technology support as you can? And, when this war is over, we will give you tax cuts. We will like allow you to like set up your companies here. We will kind of, give you all these advantages, which works out pretty interestingly because this thing becomes the sort of promise of the future. And the second is you're getting a lot of good press, which has meant that a lot of very, very smart technology has come into use in this war, which hasn't been used otherwise. So, for example, one of the most interesting ones that I found is 3D scanning. Now, we know what 3D printing is, right? 3D
Hmm.
printing is when you're kind of like printing stuff up from, these sort of, which is a building sort of thing. 3D scanning is sort of like the flip of that. When you're scanning something in 3 dimension and kind of making a sort of copy of this thing to hopefully, print in the future or use as a blueprint reference. So this 3D printing has been used in a lot of different ways. The first is like a lot of these fancy buildings, a lot of the architecture, a lot of historical legacy has been destroyed with missile strikes and with
Right.
bombings.
Mm.
So what they've done is that now, initially itself, before this happened, they started 3D scanning the stuff, which means you
Oh.
which means you now have a record of what this thing was, and it's better than a blueprint because it's very, very, you know, all sides, all angles, so you can replicate it as it was, 6 years down the line, 8 years down the line, and kind of this sort of architectural advantage as opposed to having to build from scratch. And again, this is not the only thing it's being used for. The second
Mhm.
use is slightly more dodgy, and they've come under fire for this as well. But they've been using 3D scanning to find out, like, and rebuild the faces of Russian soldiers who are died or held hostage, right? So you're using this sort of, and then you're using this with some sort of technologies that have come in from the US to identify them. So now you're identifying who this person was, and if they've died or they're being held hostage, some authorities are getting in touch with their families to sort of do this sort of emotional warfare. And
Right.
that's like this sort of very weird and like kind of dark descent into, I don't know, Black Mirror territory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's smart. It's really smart. Like,
Yeah.
all the morality aside, which we shouldn't put, but it's quite, it's very, it's very Machiavellian, kind
Hmm.
of,
Yeah.
meets the sort of AI world of what's happening. And it's not all for profit, right? So these are technologies that are kind of for profit technologies that are either doing this as, CSR, or they're doing it as, some sort of, we will get profits from this in the future. What you also have is some NGOs that are doing this, or helping out purely for, the sake of this alliance with their sort of agenda. So one of the NGOs I worked quite closely with for this story and for other stories was this NGO called Halo.
Mm.
And Halo is a demining NGO. So basically, what they do is they go to these sites which have been contaminated by bombings and missiles and like any kind of explosive ordnance, and kind of clean it up. Because a lot of the
Mhm.
times, what happens is you have casualties when, a missile will strike, but you also have casualties 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, when anything that's remained, like an
Hmm.
explosive remnant, kind of just blasts. Very
Hmm.
often, this
Right.
happens, in a field. It will also happen, when there's like kids who are playing, because usually these are quite colorful, like
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
tops of them, and they look shiny. And,
Hmm.
someone goes at it and it blasts, which means that you just have a lot of sort of this, you know, explosive remnant of war, or an ERW as it's called, just there. And
Mm.
like literally waiting to blast. So demining is superbly important during, the rebuilding or reconstruction process, and it takes a lot of time. It's also very expensive. So what Halo has been doing is they've been crowdsourcing images and information from like open source data and from like
Hmm.
social media to in real time record where a missile hit last. So you
Oh.
have, yeah, so you have like this map which kind of just goes like, okay, this is where a missile hit, this is where this happened, this is the possibility of like the remnants. Like, okay, 7 missiles came in, 5 blasted, which means two
Mm.
ERW possible. And you have
Right.
this way before there's even any question of reconstruction. Because again, it's all in this sort of process when, if these NGOs can't mitigate the war effort, the idea is that after this is over, you're going to go into rebuilding already prepared.
Hmm.
Like, you're already prepping on how to fix this. And I mean,
Right.
demining operations have been insanely expensive and like insanely risky as well, across the globe.
Yeah,
And
in Cambodia, there is like a entire bunch of population with missing limbs because the Vietnam War left like so many mines around the
Right.
Cambodian country. It's like random farm में जाओगे तो तुम्हारा उड़ जाएगा type
Mm.
situation वहाँ
Mm.
पे. हाँ, but go on. Yeah.
yeah, nee, it's basically that, right? So how do you stop that from happening, or at least you make sure it's a lot safer? At least if you're having this sort of mapping already done, and this is easier to do in real time simply because of the fact that the amount of data is just going to keep increasing.
Hmm.
you know and if, as anyone knows, doing any kind of mapping research is like needle in a haystack.
Hmm.
वो
Right.
मिलना नहीं है आपको
Hmm.
after like 6 years later. So
Hmm.
now doing it now and kind of like sorting it out is just like preemptive.
So they basically, when you say real time, so is it like, okay, so a missile comes and hits a target? Like, do they get reports real time? Ki, oh, so there are 5, 6 missiles that have come and hit the
Yes,
target during this time, and therefore, oh, like how? That's crazy.
that's the interesting thing is because you don't actually have so many informants and all. They're relying.
Yeah,
No, so
like,
they're
do they have
relying.
sensors everywhere then?
No, so the sensors are your cell phones. No, because one thing we're forgetting is this is a conflict that is happening in the time of Instagram. It's happening in the time of Twitter. It's happening in
Oh
the time of Facebook.
wow.
So it's happening at a time of TikTok. So I mean, if you see
Yeah.
Ukraine, TikTok is a whole thing. So
Oh
what people do
shit.
is like, I mean, very honest to God. Okay, like
Hmm.
for example, if today a random missile, God forbid,
Hmm.
like lands outside my house.
Hmm.
Okay, and it's not gone off, or like maybe it's gone off, but it's taken out the building in front of me. Thank God, like wherever,
Hmm. Hmm.
then what I'm gonna do is the first thing I'm gonna do is either I'm gonna tweet about it, I'm gonna
Hmm.
post a picture of it on Instagram and be like, oh my God, horror in North London, Russian
Hmm.
missile strikes. And now you have my geotag, and you can like put in this picture and you'll be like, missile here.
Ah, so it's
So
basically
what
public reports essentially which they are
exactly?
scanning, right? Okay.
Yeah,
Mm.
so they basically have like this giant sort of thing, and anyone posting is now helping out, like sort of like recognizing this thing, which is why one of the biggest sort of things that happened in December was Russia blew out like sort of these electricity components, and which meant that Ukraine went completely dark for 2 to 3
Hmm.
days,
Hmm.
which was probably one of like the biggest sort of like setbacks because a lot of this is so technology reliant.
Right.
And I mean, as and when things are going, this sort of stuff has just been developing, and it is quite fascinating to see, like this sort of very specific, startup meets government collaboration, because usually tech has been the domain of very much, this especially startup tech, defense
Hmm. Hmm.
companies and all aside, has very much been the domain of its own thing in the private
Mm.
world, right?
Mm.
So just kind of seeing how that transitions and what it could look like, because for now this is a thing that's very obvious in Ukraine, but doesn't mean other countries aren't gonna like sort of follow suit and see how they can collaborate with. So it's a sort of
Hmm.
pressure cooker version of what's possible when you try and let tech companies do their best. And of course, sometimes deep dark shit happens, but
Yeah.
what is that sort of thing? So,
It's
I mean, that's the
basically,
story.
it's interesting when you say this because now I'm thinking what Ukraine has essentially done is, sure, there is this big war going on in modern times, which I mean, a massive war which the world hasn't seen for a few years,
Mhm.
like proper country to country conflict,
Right.
and it's an invasion. So, which is
Hmm.
again like, if India Pakistan goes to war, it's not like an invasion; it's just a war. Yeah, but the invasion ho raha hai.
Yeah.
So in this situation, I think Ukraine, what it's trying to do is become like a testing ground for
Yep.
like a future war technologies. Then
Yeah.
essentially, that's what you're saying.
I mean, yeah, like the idea is, more optimistic. Ki this is a testing ground for any technology that can do a lot of good. For example, the 3D printing, 3D scanning technology can also be used to build prosthetics. But the fact of the matter is that we know from experience that once people find something out in a specific context, they're going to
Yeah,
use it and make it better slash worse.
yeah,
Yeah.
And I mean, we even do that with technology that was never meant for war, right? Like, I mean,
right.
defense spending across the globe has gone up. Like it's shot up because now everyone's like, this could happen to us.
Mm.
Now that you mention it, now I'm thinking, so okay, for doing good and all these technologies can be used,
Yeah.
but then obviously, so US is supplying a ton of weapons to
Ukraine.
Ukraine, right?
Mm.
Russia has also like has developed and is using its own weapons. So technically it's a testing ground for them as well, right?
Yeah.
Try out new
Exactly.
weapons in this nice fun war that is happening and see if we can sell more
Fun
produce
war.
product that can be, you know what I mean.
I know. Yes.
But that, I mean, it can go both ways. Like, the weapons companies must be also doing this
Yeah.
then.
No, absolutely. I think, and one of the sort of, at least in the last year phase sort of war, the biggest thing was that Russia was using technology that was a fair bit older than all the other
Mhm.
countries, right? Because in
Hmm.
some ways they've been insular
Right.
to a great extent. And I mean, when we come to this, to bring in our country, India, for the longest, and even now, India has not condemned the war, right? India has
Mm.
not condemned
Hmm.
Russia. And
Mm.
for very specific reasons. We have massive reliance on Russia for defense technology as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now we we can't go out and be like, you are bad, and they'll be like, okay, cool, giving all this tech to Pakistan, see y'all in like 6 years. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
that sort of thing, like, or them being like giving all this tech to China. And
Yeah.
like, it's kind of like Russia's pretty well protected on that sort of South Asian context, simply
Yeah.
because of the fact that we have dushmani with all our neighbors, and they are like, yeah, chalo, we'll be friends. So there's
Hmm.
I mean, very early on, I'd done a piece, I think March or April 2023 or 2022, where it was like, why can't India condemn Russia? And I was like, as far as my judgment goes and my analysis goes, India is not going to condemn Russia till this ends.
Mm.
Even after it ends, that's not going to happen.
Hmm.
And a lot of these countries will remain non aligned simply because of the fact that we can't be sure that the EU is going to come and help us. No,
Right.
We
they
have
won't.
yeah, we have done an episode on this actually, on Airlight, and it was called "How Does India Become a Superpower?"
Mm.
So we had Indrani Bakchi, who is a
Mhm.
foreign affairs expert and journalist as well. So she said this very same thing which you are saying, that obviously we are going to think of our self interest. Like तुम कितना भी morality लाओ, कितना भी कुछ भी लाओ, but essentially what India is doing is that we are making our own foreign
Right.
policy.
Yeah.
And it's not a two polar world anymore. It's not like just west versus like east, or not allies versus axis, which it used to be. Now it's a multipolar world. India is a pole,
Yeah.
and China is a pole, and Russia is a pole, and US is a pole, and
Mm.
Europe and NATO is a pole. So like all of these things you have to think about when you're making foreign policy. And therefore with Russia we are neutral,
Yeah.
बिकॉज़ उन वहाँ से भी माल आ रहा है और हम भी उनको प्रोटेक्शन दे रहे हैं
Mm.
कभी-कभी।
Mm.
दे रहे हैं क्या? नहीं दे रहे। I don't know।
Okay, but also the thing is that the public sort of opinion in India. I mean, this is not me saying it. This is like
हुँ।
a lot of like kind of like research that happened, is that actually desis are pretty favorable towards Russia.
Oh yes, absolutely। Yeah, yeah।
We are like like what is that? Hindi Chini bhai bhai, like, and
Yeah।
no,
Yes.
Hindi Rusi bhai bhai, like that's a whole sort of sentiment, because it's kind of like, हाँ तो यूरोप ने हमारे लिए क्या किया,
Yeah।
like क्यों.
Mm.
Our producer Nikhil, who is just sitting here, he just went like, because we are getting a lot of comments. We have covered Russia and Ukraine before, and we got these comments कि अरे क्या Putin तो जीत रहा है, what are you saying? What Ukraine is going to get destroyed only।
Yeah.
Like
I mean, there's the
Yeah.
Raj Kapoor song, the Sar Pe Laal Topi Rusi. So
Rusi,
like we've been giving them pop culture references since the 60s.
Yeah, and and it's not just India, right? It's all these sort of countries that, like, whether it's the African bloc of countries and all, which have like a sort of favorable opinion of Russia, simply because
Yeah.
of the fact that, you're like, why is, like all these European countries taking such a high moral ground? Ki, how can you get into someone else's territory? And we're like,
Hmm।
but boss, you were here. You were here, like half a century ago. You were here,
Yeah,
like, it's
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of this sort of like, is it like high IR, or is it like high philosophy? No, it's as
mm,
simple as, when you did this, it was okay,
yeah,
but
Mm.
now this guy is doing it, you have a problem.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, it's that's what that comes in. I mean, when, because we were talking
That's what
about
I
ships,
say,
Kina.
like India should do its own campaigns now. Like अखंड भारत बनाना है ना, तो इस्लामाबाद में, अफगानिस्तान में हमारा फ्लैग लहरना चाहिए। Because that's the thing. So then when they're like, "ओए, इंडिया क्या कर रहे हैं?" It's like, अरे तुमने किया, अभी तुमने किया तो हम भी नहीं कर सकते क्या? हमको भी करने
Oh
दो। फिर
God.
देखो पुतिन ने क्या किया, वो भी कर रहा है तो हम क्यों नहीं कर सकते? Like, sorry, just
That's
random. Go
okay.
on।
Deeply concerned by the calls for Akhand Bharat at 7:45 a.m. on the morning. I'm like, deeply concerned. But you know,
I very conveniently ignored when Azania said that you should check out Ukraine TikTok, because sitting in London it's very easy for you to say to
oh
check out
shit,
TikTok, but us sitting in India cannot access TikTok.
But please tell us about Ukraine TikTok and for
आप
Yeah,
people
ना
in
reels
India.
पे देख लो, आप reels पे देख लो. It's the same content, you know. I still
Yeah,
don't have TikTok on my phone because I just feel like, you know, why? Why do I need one more app kind of like, you know, sucking away at my soul?
because China
Then,
को data देना है. So, I mean, that's why you need it. Yeah.
this is slight
hey,
digression, but
Yeah.
did you hear the CEO of Spotify has said now their layout is also gonna kind of mimic TikTok. Is that moment you
Oh,
go on
what?
wow.
Spotify, they'll start playing stuff,
अरे
and it is
Netflix, yesterday I was checking the
yeah,
Netflix app, उस पे भी shorts है अब. Like
yeah.
Netflix has shorts.
Yes.
Bizarre.
Oh wait,
Anyway.
my Spotify is already showing me videos, chota chota, with the
So
Ghana.
then, yeah, so
Hmm.
then you must be one of their beta testers, I
Oh
guess.
God,
Hmm. Lucky
deeply
you.
concerned.
Yeah.
But so all of this you spoke about Azania, it sounds very science fictiony when you say stuff
Hmm.
like 3D scanning and all of this. And last week also we had Karan who spoke about we recently completed 1 year to the Russian invasion
Yeah,
to Ukraine.
Hmm.
Um, so my question to him was that in this David versus Goliath sort of a clash, are we seeing Goliath was the smaller one, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Goliath
yeah.
being more
Yeah.
dominant. So Karan's response was that we can't really now say who's David and who's Goliath, because Ukraine has been pretty holding up pretty well, and the way you're describing the way they're incorporating technology, it's almost like they were preempting
It's
this.
almost like David is actually Terminator. It's like yeah.
Yeah, and they were preempting this and they were ready, and now they are not just ready, they are planning for the future also. कि तुम जितना तोड़ना है तोड़ दो, हम तो फिर से बना लेंगे, हमारे पास तो scans है.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what comes across to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think A, it's that, and B, the second thing is that, you know, very, very much similar to that David versus Goliath wala analogy. We can't say, because the thing is that Ukraine is being pumped up and propped up by all these major powers,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Right.
Like, it's, I mean, very, very bluntly, it's not necessarily about defending Ukraine. It's more about defending the EU at this point,
Right.
or like
Hmm. Hmm.
defending this sort of, you know, European, that we can't be invaded, because it's
Hmm.
very simple, you know. If
Hmm.
someone who is EU adjacent gets invaded and gets taken over by Russia, which has happened before, you know, you had it with Crimea, you've had
Crimea.
that. Yeah, like, you know, already one chunk's gone. Now this is a full blown situation. If this
Hmm.
happens, then that means that you're giving a signal key. You can come over and, like, you know, take over France next week. Or,
Yeah.
you know, you can come and start with Poland, because I mean,
Yeah.
like, France, England to chalo thoda dur ki baat ho
Hmm.
jata hai, but you have a lot of countries in that belt, you know, the
Correct.
Hmm.
like the post Soviet Union countries, which are
Hmm.
all like, okay, if this has happened, then you're gonna have, like, you know, very much like that sort of like the Russian equivalent of like an Akhand Bharat, where you're like, now
Hmm.
you're gonna have like the SSR all over again, like the
Hmm.
Akhand
USSR.
Russia.
Akhand Russia.
Yeah.
But so when do you see this war ending? Like, do you see any hope that this will end anytime soon?
It will, I mean, it will go on for a while, right?
Okay.
It will go on for a while. I don't think there is going to be any sort of, you know, dramatic, today we've taken down Moscow situation. Like, it's not going to end with, like, you know, some sort of massive, you know, full stop. It's probably
Hmm.
going to end in negotiations, which
Right.
is, you know, not as dramatic and not as, you know, like, oh my God, you know, we sent in like this sort of
Hmm. Hmm.
hologram of Zelensky to Moscow and like he stole the data and whatever. Nahin, aisa kuch nahi hone wala hai.
Hmm.
Most likely it'll end in negotiations, because
Yeah.
we can't keep this going on simply because of the fact that, if you've seen, we have salad shortages in the UK.
Hmm.
Like there
Hmm.
is grain shortages, which is quite, and like electricity prices and fuel
Yeah.
prices.
They
Sorry,
like
sorry.
I was reading this news. I think like a few days ago only, that for the first time in I think 40 years, UK has dipped into their reserve coal for electricity generation. So like
Hmm.
there is a crisis there also
Right.
Yeah,
happening.
like the electricity and the energy bills are like so high. Like the government has to support. Like they have like these sort of, you know, caps on isse zyada nahi aa sakta bill, and they have like sort of like, you know, coupons and vouchers ki, you know, to support you paying your energy bill, because the thing is the energy crisis will like block the EU first, like not
Hmm.
the EU, just the European continent.
Yeah.
Second is that Ukraine is the grain basket. So सारा गेहूं वहां से आ रहा है.
Hmm.
Mm.
But now that's also gotten like, stifled. So now you are quite at a loss. You're not getting fuel for your, equipment, and like for your electricity and for your heating and for whatever from Russia, and you're not getting as many supplies of food from Ukraine, which means
Hmm.
everything is expensive. Cost of living has completely soared up. Like,
And it's very cold as well.
yeah, I mean, but that actually has been a thing that surprisingly, because of climate change, this year was Europe's warmest winter, which
Okay.
actually helped.
Yeah.
See, I didn't stay here. I was like, I can't do this. I do not wish to do this. I came and packed up and was in Mumbai for 6 weeks, because
Yeah.
that dust and pollution is fine. Sub-zero temperatures are not. Like, no.
Uh,
The-
there you go. Anything else you want to add, Meghnad?
no, I'm
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to say before we wrap up this part of the episode that for the 2019 election, Modi ji also used holograms
I
for
was about,
election
yeah,
rallies.
he
So
did, didn't
Zelensky के
he?
पास होगा
Yeah.
hologram,
Not
हमारे
just
पास.
2019, उसके पहले भी किया था कहीं तो भी.
Okay.
Hologram was a thing. Modi
Yeah.
ji did it first.
Yes.
Yeah,
There were
amazing.
trucks which would open and then a hologram
What a
would appear.
trailblazer.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. All right. At this point, we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll hear the stories that I have and Meghnad have. But before we go into a break, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. Like the video and subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone you think will enjoy it. If you're listening to this on a audio podcast, please rate us and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and say nice things about us because it
ईमेल भी कर
helps.
सकते हो.
Email bhi kar sakte ho. All about now at pratilipi.com is the email ID. I was just double checking with my producer right there. So yeah, all those things, please write into us. Please give us feedback. Let's take a quick break and we'll see you right after this. Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. We are back with the second season of How to Citizen. Hosted by Meghnad and Shreyas, we have some amazing guests to brush up on their 7th standard civics lessons. So catch the episode on the All About Now feed on IVM, YouTube, and all streaming platforms. On the Habit Coach podcast, Ashden shares how to live in the moment or in present. On Storytellers and Story Sellers, Vineet talks to Preeti Nahlani, COO at Enel. They talk about how radio forayed into video content, digital apps, and why it's a tough business and more. And on Think Fast, Varun and Suchita talk about the Indus Valley report presented by Bloom Ventures, YouTube's agenda for 2023, and more. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcast.com. We have some exciting stuff for you over there. Follow us on social media via IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you like our shows, spread the word, tell your friends, and don't forget to rate and review them wherever you're listening to them. You'll also find all our shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcast. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week: Yono SBI, Cash Free Payments, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thank you for making this possible. And we're back on page 10. With me is Meghnad in the studio, and joining us from London is Azania Patel. All right, so let's get to the news piece that I have.
Hmm.
I want to talk about one of the most beloved politicians of our country, Mr. Rahul Gandhi. So the headline reads: Indian democracy under attack, opposition leaders being spied on, says Rahul Gandhi at Cambridge University.
Hmm.
So this speech of his at the Cambridge University sparked a bit of controversy back home. There were a lot of allegations on him maligning the name of the country going abroad. I'll just point out a couple of things he said in the speech. I haven't seen the complete speech, but I believe Meghnad you
I
have.
have, yes.
So, आप शब्द शब्द से वाकिफ है of what of what Rahul said. But in a nutshell, what firstly, I should mention he's shaved off his beard, the one he had
Very
grown.
important.
Very important.
Very important.
The sage like the appearance that he had taken for the Bharat Jodo Yatra is now gone. He put on a suit and he went to Cambridge. And basically, he said that foreign affairs should be more self-serving, if I can put it simply. He also said that minorities are under threat in the country. That in certain places, criminality or things that shouldn't be criminal are being posed on as criminal. Uh, we are going through a tough time. Democracy is under threat, and basically he said in certain issues, the difference between the opposition and the ruling party should be kept aside, and they should come together for an exchange of ideas, which is not happening. He says that the current dispensation likes to very much keep things to themselves. And basically, because of this, there was a lot of furor. A lot of BJP leaders have said because he's not winning elections here, he's going to on foreign soil and making these kind of
Hmm.
statements. Uh, because in response to which the Congress spokesperson did their bit to on their Twitter, at least they played clips of our prime minister going on foreign soil and praising China
Hmm.
and making statements similar to what Rahul Gandhi did. So once again, we are in this political rigmarole of Rahul Gandhi saying things on foreign soil and it creating a furor here.
Hmm.
What I want to know from both of you, especially Azania, since you are on foreign soil, an Indian on foreign soil, where do you stand on this whole notion of के बाहर जाओ तो country को बुरा नहीं दिखाने का? Like no
Hmm.
matter who you are, even if you are a part of the opposition, you shouldn't go abroad and say these things.
Hmm.
You are representing the country, so at the end of the day, you're someone who has to show us in good light because yeah, इस चीज पे नहीं बोलने
इस
का.
चीज पे नहीं बोलने का.
Me, I think very realistically, the scene is ki, are you criticizing the country or are you criticizing the halat, right? I mean, at no point of time do you have this person saying that I refuse to be Indian anymore. I am ashamed of this country. It's not like, someone leaves North Korea and is like being like, oh, horrible country.
Hmm.
Definitely will not go back. Please save me, give me asylum. I mean, I think this is more of like in a healthy democracy, you're gonna have criticism of the state and the government and the state of things. And I mean, in an ideal world, should be allowed. In the current context we're in, has this been appreciated? No. So
Hmm.
like you,
So there are two things that Rahul Gandhi did. Okay, so
Hmm.
one is, of course, he gave a lecture
Hmm.
called "Learning to Listen," which
Yes.
I heard.
Yeah.
I think I heard like a bunch of it.
Hmm.
Then I was like,
you did
okay.
not learn to listen to it.
Yeah. Did you learn?
I was trying to learn and listen, but after a point, it was very repeated points which he has
Okay.
already given and said in multiple places. The second is he did like this interaction,
Hmm. Q&A
and
type.
Q&A
Yeah.
type thing where this question was asked to him. Ki by this old gentleman journalist who said, ki, I was great friends with your uh,
Father.
grandmother,
Grandmother. Okay.
Indira Gandhi, and she actually famously said when she went to the UK, when someone asked her about something to do with India, she's like, I don't discuss these things
Hmm.
about India, and I don't
Hmm.
like to malign my own country on foreign
Correct.
soil.
Hmm.
So he asked me, oh, why don't you follow your
Hmm.
grandmother's
Diktat.
diktat?
Yeah.
Or like, just example of
Opinion. Huh?
why do
Hmm.
you do this? So he said that, Arey, but the person who is actually defaming India abroad is the prime minister of this country, because he's the one who is going around and cursing the opposition every time, like Trump ke rally mein ya fir jahan pe bhi, he did this. So that also counts as defaming the country,
Hmm.
because we are also a part of the country. So
Hmm.
like you can't have double standards there.
Hmm.
Rhetorical answer, I get it, but well, makes sense. And as Azani also said, I think it's also important to differentiate the government from the country,
Yeah.
right? The country, sure, you're supposed to run the country,
Hmm.
right? Or you're supposed to serve the country and
Hmm.
its countrymen. But those are two separate things,
Hmm.
right? Just the country is made up. It's a society that is made up of a bunch of people who have their own thoughts, who have their own belief systems, etc., own cultures. If I criticize, say, even the culture of India, like let's say, there was this clip that went viral, right, where this uncle is crying, like he's sitting in a park and
Okay.
with like other uncles,
Hmm.
and he's like, "Arey, Modi ji ko क्यों इतना गाली मारते हो तुम? Why do you keep
Really?
cursing him?" Yeah, he's like,
How did I miss
क्या
this?
I
क्या
have not
बोलते हो
seen
तुम?
this.
इतना अच्छा काम कर रहे हैं, इतने लोगों को वीजा दे रहे हैं वो बाहर, and like कितने कंट्रीज में जा सकते हो, पता है क्यों आप इतना गाली मारते हो उनको?
Oh.
Cries a lot, and
Hmm.
everybody around him is like, अरे
Hmm.
ठीक है, भावुक मत होइए,
Hmm. Hmm.
like हाँ, हम भी प्रोटेक्ट करेंगे मोदी
Hmm.
जी को आपके साथ, etc. uh, that's the thing. So if I criticize that shit,
Huh.
which is this uncledom culture of just ass licking,
Hmm.
now am I criticizing the country suddenly because I'm calling it a culture,
Hmm.
right? And because they also make up the country, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So at the same time, it's like, if Rahul Gandhi is going to a foreign side. He said another thing, right? He
Mhm.
again said that India is union of states.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Again, right wing Twitter
Mm.
in India, they did posted that clip. I was like, hey, फिर से बोल दिया,
Mm.
lol, pappu,
Tukde Tukde Gang.
yeah, whatever. And then people are posting screenshots of the constitution's
Constitution,
first
yeah,
line, which
yeah,
says the same thing.
yeah.
And lawyers are posting this, and they're like, boss, तूने law पढ़ा है, constitution पढ़ा, एक line पढ़ा है क्या तूने constitution
Mm.
का, because that's the first line. So why are you like, doing
Making a
this,
thing, yeah.
making things up? But I think the larger picture here is that the BJP, every time Rahul Gandhi or Congress says something,
Yeah.
they just get a convenient punching bag, no?
Mm.
And
Mm.
that's what is happening here as well. When
Mm.
कुछ भी बोला तो हाँ मतलब गलत ही तो बोलता है वो आदमी.
Mm.
And
But this has been the BJP's sort of that's what they're trying to do, right? Equate the government with the country.
yes,
That government equals country, and
is equal to Modi ji also.
and then
Uh,
you break it down further. One man equals to
yeah,
country.
yeah.
So no matter if you're saying anything wrong about the government, equal to you saying something wrong about the prime minister,
Hmm.
equal to something wrong about the country. Um, but I think I brought this up when did an episode about the Bharat where we covered the Bharat Jodo Yatra also. Does the government attacking Rahul Gandhi now only expose that on, like now they are noticing him more? Because
Yeah.
if he was like क्या कहते हैं उसको, if he was irrelevant,
Irrelevant.
then they shouldn't make any news at all.
Mm.
Anusha was talking about how she covered the yatra on ground, and she said when it started it barely made any
Hmm.
news, but as it went along it started getting more and more press and more attacks from the
Hmm.
BJP. So again, is this again following that pattern of oh, now he's actually wrangling them a little bit?
In fact, he spoke
Uh,
about this during his
Hmm.
lecture also. But sorry, Azania, you were
No,
saying.
no, I was just gonna be like, it's thoda optimistic to think like that because also like right wing social media just gets on. Let's be real, anything like वो
Hmm.
Hmm.
कुछ like वो I mean for example I think कल मैं देख रही थी तो भारत matrimony was trending on Twitter and
Yes, boycott Bharat matrimony.
I
And
was
Swiggy.
so confused. I was
Hmm.
so confused because I was like, what?
Hmm.
Why is this happening? And then I went and I was like, acha, कुछ तो add हुआ. Like, same
Anti-holy
thing.
something.
सेम थिंग जो कौन सी वो ज्वेलरी की कंपनी है उसके टाइम पे दिवाली के
Tanishq.
टाइम पे हुआ था
Hmm.
कि हाँ आई एम लाइक या सो इट्स लाइक एवरी कपल ऑफ डेज देयर इज something
Hmm.
this is like is that the orange
Hmm.
bikini that Deepika Padukone wore
Yeah.
relevant for
Oh, did you
elections
know
wala scene?
even the boycott Swiggy was also trending
Yeah, yeah.
because
Boycott Swiggy was
Why?
also
yeah,
trending.
because Swiggy
Swiggy
had
to
a
orange
hoarding.
orange hai.
No, no. Because Swiggy had a hoarding that said egg can go in salad, can go as omelette on people's heads. No, like that, something similar
अच्छा
to this.
हाँ
Hmm.
तो बोले कैसे बोल दिया? How can you tell us how to play Holi? If you want to throw eggs, we'll throw eggs. So boycott Swiggy trended for a day.
Amazing.
Then
Amazing.
there's a friend of mine who's an artist called Jugal who tweeted today saying कि सब लोग को बोल दो होली खत्म हो गई, स्विगी फिर से इंस्टॉल करे, वरना वरना समोसा खरीदने के लिए पतलून पहन के नीचे जाना पड़ेगा.
No, I was like
Sorry, yeah.
boycott Bharat matrimony because arranged marriages are bad and you
Oh.
should do only love marriages. And
Sure.
boycott Swiggy because अपने husband को खाना बनाना सिखाओ. So they're
oh god
and then everybody was like, "Oh, what उसने insult किया तू भी insult करा." I'm like, I'm
Right.
not insulting. Then I was like, please guide me to on Holi
Hmm.
what to boycott.
Hmm.
मतलब like I keep retweeting that because new things keep coming then.
Yeah.
So that's how I found out about Swiggy also because Bharat matrimony में Swiggy भी हो गया. अब और कुछ boycott कर रहे होंगे आज.
Okay.
But Rahul Gandhi,
Yes.
coming back
hmm.
to Rahul Gandhi, um, the thing that Bharat Jodo Yatra you were mentioning. So his lecture was learning to listen. So what he
Hmm.
did was he wanted to talk about why the Bharat Jodo Yatra was important in
Hmm.
general, and what he wanted to demonstrate was that we created a space for people to have emotional outbursts.
Okay.
So he's like, when I met people while I
Oh,
was
right.
doing.
Yes. Yes.
Remember,
Yes.
Anusha was also telling us
Yes.
about this, that people used to come and like crib and cry about their problems. It's not necessarily anti BJP or
Correct.
anything,
Yeah.
but
Hmm.
महंगाई के बारे में, job नहीं मिल रहा है, accidental insurance नहीं मिल रहा है, ये वो. So they kept it coming and telling Rahul Gandhi about it. Now he said that that was the purpose of the yatra, and that is what bothered the
Right.
BJP.
He gave examples of a Kashmiri boy
Yes,
who came up to him and
yes.
expressed his concerns.
Right,
Yeah.
and also he said the other thing, which is when they started off, they thought that kuch matlab 1000 log साथ में चलेंगे,
Hmm.
like whatever. But then the number went up and it went up and it went up as the yatra went along, and it crossed
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Madhya
Yeah.
Pradesh and everything. It went till Punjab, and then there were like 100,000 people at some
Right.
point in the yatra walking with him in some cities and places. Rattled the BJP.
Right.
So I feel like it can go it can go both ways, right? Like
Hmm.
maybe the BJP is actually bothered about his rising popularity, maybe.
Hmm.
But the second thing is it's also very convenient for them. It also has
Right.
been always
Correct.
like Adani Hindenburg के बारे में अगर तुम report कर रहे हो and people are talking about, that's inconvenient for them.
Right. Yeah.
That doesn't work because
Yeah.
also they don't want people to also like sort of
Talk
focus on
about it.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
punching Rahul Gandhi has been like their hobby
Their
forever,
their hobby.
and
Yeah.
it's so
Correct.
easy. Like मतलब बॉक्सिंग रिंग में अगर आप जाओगे और एक ही अपोनेंट को फेस करोगे तो यू इवेंचुअली लर्न द ट्रिक्स ऑफ द ट्रेड एंड हाउ ये ऐसा पंच मारता है, ये अपर कट ऐसा मारता है, एक्सेट्रा, एंड यू विल हैव काउंटर स्ट्रेटजीज,
Yeah. Yeah.
राइट? बट अडानी हिंडनबर्ग तुम अगर बॉक्सिंग रिंग में लेके आओगे तो उनको क्या पता क्या करना है उसमें.
Correct.
तो
Yeah. Yeah.
दैट्स व्हाट इज
All
हैपनिंग.
right. Azania, anything you want to say before we move on about this?
No, I think pretty much that's kind of what it is, right? Like, interesting sort of trajectory for like Rahul Gandhi to be like rebranding himself. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
also like how relevant is it? And how is it gonna be? Not like how relevant is it, like more genuinely like question mark, ye ab kya hoga
Mhm.
types. But interesting to see. I
Yeah.
will look up the
Not
fact of
not
the
a
day as well.
rhetorical question, but an actual question. So
An actual
how
question.
relevant is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, no, next thing I'm getting cancelled on Twitter by the left wing, not the right wing.
Yeah.
It's like,
Uh, all right. But don't worry, there are plenty of food apps before that which will get cancelled.
Yes, हम बहुत बहुत low आते
बहुत लोग
हैं.
आते हैं.
oh God.
Uh, all right, so let's move on to Meghnad now. Meghnad, what do you have for us this week?
Okay, so I will read two headlines which are obviously about the same story. First is Fox News produced zero evidence to back election lie. Defamation case here. Second is Murdoch feared Fox News host went too far on Trump election live. Fox Files shows, right? So this is continuing with the trend of the international affairs
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
that we are talking about today. This was a very interesting story that has been playing out for the last 2 weeks, right? Last week I wanted to sort of cover it, but I did the Manish Sisodia thing. But
Mm.
but since then, 2 days after that, more shit has come out, which is glorious. So this is the perfect time to talk about this story. Now, what has been going on in the US, if you remember, is in 2019 when Biden won
Mm,
the elections,
mm,
there was this whole host of Trump and Trump supporters who said that the election has been stolen,
yeah,
that there was massive vote rigging going on. They especially accused one company which makes these voting machines. It's called Dominion Voting Systems.
mhm,
Now, the thing is that they, along with, like their, matlab, Trump, along with his people like Sidney Powell and other people, they were the ones making these claims. Fox News gave them the platform to do this, right? A Fox News, OAN, there were a bunch of
yeah,
these right wing media houses which did this, but Fox News, being the most prominent one,
yeah.
also did it, right? So now what is happening is the Dominion voting system is suing Fox News for $1.6 billion, accusing the cable TV network of amplifying debunked allegations that their voting machines were used to rig the 2020 US elections, right? And Dominion is the one that makes those machines which do the US elections. Now, what happened is that because of this defamation suit, the discovery part of the court case made Fox News give a ton of documents which have some very fun things inside. So, documents revealed during this case show executives, producers, and hosts discussing concerns about the network's reputation and casting doubts on the plausibility of Trump's case.
Mm,
So, while they were actually giving platform and promoting Trump's view, internally they were shitting on them,
yeah,
and that is what was revealed basically. And shitting on them, matlab, I'm not mincing words here, right? Because
yeah,
they are
Yeah.
actually shitting on them. They're like, "अरे ये क्या चूतिया आदमी है, ये क्या बोल रहा है" type situation
yeah,
था
yeah,
Mhm.
internally.
yeah,
But they would go and do the show on what that admi is doing also,
Yeah.
right? So, so it's hilarious because some of the things that have come out are just crazy. But the biggest revelation was Rupert Murdoch,
Okay.
who owns
Fox
Fox
News.
News, also agreeing with this.
Oh
So,
God.
executives from Fox News owner Rupert Murdoch down to top hosts, including Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham,
Yeah.
they have all been shown to have derided Trump, his surrogates, and the lies that they pushed about 2020
Yeah.
elections, right? The reason why they did this, and they admitted this also, is because they were scared that the current batch of viewers will desert them if they start speaking the truth.
Correct.
I
Yeah.
was like, so okay, so there are a few exhibits which I will tell you about. Okay, so in one Murdoch, he's 91 years old, by the way.
Yeah.
He's the chairman of Fox
Mm.
Corporation. He emailed the Fox News president, Suzanne Scott, right? This is on the day of Biden's inauguration, and he asked, is it unarguable that high profile Fox voices fed the story that the election was stolen and that January 6th an important chance to have the result overturned? Right? Um, so basically, essentially, what he's implying is that top Fox voices
Hmm.
have been complicit in the January
Sixth
6th
insurrection.
attack
Yeah.
that happened on the US Capitol,
Yeah.
right? Um, so he said maybe Sean and Laura went too far.
Okay.
So, okay. All very well for Sean to tell you he was in despair about Trump, but what did he tell his viewers? Is what he was writing to the CEO of Yale. Okay. Murdoch continues that this was stupid and damaging, referring, and this is when he was referring to the news conference where Rudy Giuliani's head was leaking.
Oh, that
Do you
one. Yes.
remember?
The
Yeah.
Four Seasons,
So,
infamous Four
yeah.
Seasons,
So Rudy Giuliani went and said that the election is
has been
stolen
stolen.
and all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
things. So that press conference, so Rupert Murdoch was watching that and he was writing to his CEO saying the only one encouraging Trump and misleading him is Rudy Giuliani. Both are increasingly mad. The
Oh
real
God.
danger is what he might do as a president, right? um and he described this whole election fraud thing as real crazy stuff.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, so that's Murdoch, right? And again, big guy, succession wala admi.
Yeah.
He's basically, for
Oh God.
reference, he's the guy
Yeah.
based on Succession. Anyway, so right, so then there are other things, right? So there is Tucker Carlson, right? He
Oh,
texted a
this is my
producer.
favorite. Yeah.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson, for those who don't know, is the Sudhir Chaudhary of USA.
Oh, I was gonna
uh,
say American Arnab.
American, oh, that's Sean Hannity.
Oh, okay.
वो भी है,
Oh,
उसका भी है, रुक जा तू. अभी
okay.
सुधीर चौधरी,
This is
American Sudhir
episode
Chaudhary.
one, Abbas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Episode two, three, four, Abaki.
So Tucker Carlson texted a producer to say, we are very, very close to being able to ignore Trump on most nights. I truly can't wait to do it. I hate him passionately. And then he goes on TV and basically praises Trump, right?
Yeah,
That
of
is what,
course.
yeah.
Yeah.
Then in another exchange, Carlson said that Trump is good at destroying things. He could easily destroy us if we play this wrong. Right. So that's our friend Carlson. There were other, obviously, people in the same thread who were also saying things.
Yeah.
Laura Ingraham and other big
Mm.
faces, Sean Hannity. They were also calling basically everything is nuts, what is happening here, etc. But the most interesting thing was this woman called Sydney Powell.
Okay.
So Sydney Powell, for those who don't know, is the one who led the charge on this whole election fraud thing, where
Okay.
she's the one who first made these accusations, did press conferences. In the Rudy Giuliani press conference, she was also there.
Okay.
So
So she's from Trump's camp.
she's from Trump's
Okay.
camp, right? She's basically one of the main people of Trump's camp, or was becoming that
Mm.
at that point.
Mm.
Essentially, she's a conspiracy theorist,
Got it.
right? Who tried to overturn the 2020 elections, right? Now, Tucker Carlson called her nuts.
Mm.
And another host said that she's lying. Okay.
Mm.
But they put her on air anyway.
Of course.
But the clinching thing that happened is there is this show run by Maria Bartiromo.
Hmm.
another one of those journalists that they have, right? She did a show in November 2000, where
November
she
2020.
November 2020, sorry, November
Yeah.
2020. She did a show where, before she did this show and featured this Sydney Powell, an email came to Fox News from Sydney Powell's office, who basically wanted to give evidence to the claims that she was going to make on the show,
Okay.
right?
Hmm.
She said that I found out about this election for fraud because she spoke to a headless time traveler who
Oh
found out about
God.
this in a semi conscious state. That is literally the only evidence she gives Fox News. And on that very night, this woman puts her on
On the show.
on the show,
Yeah.
doesn't go into where she got the evidence or the source
Oh
of it,
God.
because obviously
That's a little
not.
too much even for Fox News
Yeah,
viewers. Yeah.
but she lets her air her
Uh,
claims anyway. Okay,
yeah.
repeating this. Wait, she spoke to a headless time traveler who found out about the election fraud in a semi-conscious state. Is the evidence which this entire thing was based on.
Yeah.
Now, during the hearing, the deposition, the anchor was asked, "Did you know about this email?" And she's like, "Yes,
Hmm.
Oh
I knew
God.
about this," right? Now, Murdoch essentially also was asked during deposition some very difficult questions. And one of the biggest things that happened was Murdoch was asked by a lawyer of Dominion, from Dominion, "Do you believe that the 2020 presidential elections was free and fair?" Murdoch responds, "Yes."
Hmm.
And then he adds, "The election was not stolen." Right?
Ooh.
So essentially, this deposition is becoming like a watershed moment for American media, right? In general, right?
Okay.
And also right wing. There is one thing though, this is a defamation case. They're notoriously difficult to win,
Hmm.
even in the US courts.
Hmm.
You have to prove actual harm, wahan pe, and malice. Right, but what people are saying, experts are saying, I've heard like a bunch of experts on the US law talking about this also. Proving malice is very difficult usually in cases of defamation, but in this case, because there is so much evidence that
Hmm.
on an internal chat or with producers, with everyone from Murdoch to bottom level tak, सब लोग गाली मार रहे हैं, सब लोग बोल रहे हैं कि ये हम क्या कर रहे हैं, like सब लोगों को पता है कि what they are doing is
Is
wrong,
wrong. Yeah.
but at the same time on air you go and do the opposite,
Right.
which proves that essentially they knew and deliberately were spreading malicious information, false
Right.
information, and also inciting a riot. so therefore, and which actually became a riot
Right.
on
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
January 9th. So that is the overall story. It's a continuing story. Documents are keep coming out. There's a lot of redacted stuff
Hmm.
in these documents also, which the lawyers of Dominion are trying to unredact,
Hmm.
which might happen, is what they're saying.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. I have a question before we bring Azania in. Uh, does this matter to the average Fox News viewer? Because for them, it will be just like, oh, this is another conspiracy to badmouth and go after Fox News.
Interestingly enough, I was looking at this one video of, I don't remember the name of the anchor, not one of these big three,
Okay.
Fox News anchor
Hmm.
only, who references this and says that we know that a big story is breaking about our network, Fox News, and as a journalist, it is my duty to cover it.
Hmm.
But I've been told by my management, I don't agree with them, to
Okay.
not talk about this,
Okay.
and also not essentially get involved in this because there is a case going on in the courts which might
Hmm.
complicate matters, right?
Hmm.
I think what is happening, and there's a report in the Daily Beast which you must read, कि Fox के अंदर क्या चल रहा है, that also matters, right? Because
Hmm.
like a lot of reporters are now very pissed and worried about the future of the network,
Hmm.
and they're also like saying that we should have stopped this when it
Mhm.
had happened.
Hmm.
We can't let this lie continue for too long, and we helped some really nutty people platform some really nutty people in
Their
this whole
opinions,
thing.
huh?
So for the usual Fox News viewer, as you said, the reason why they did this whole thing and they kept repeatedly saying this is because हमारे जो viewers है वो हमको desert करके चले जाएंगे
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
OAN,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
there are
yeah.
these other
Way more,
even
even more, yeah,
crazier
even crazier
right
networks.
wing news channels
Yeah.
that have popped up there. That was their biggest fear. Even Murdoch was very scared of that. He also said that people are deserting us for CNN. So essentially, which is bizarre, but he was worried about
Hmm.
that. So two things. One is, of course, it's a business, so they
Yeah.
wanted viewership and they wanted this whole thing to happen. So for the usual Fox News viewer, there are other options,
Hmm.
right? Like short answer.
Hmm.
So therefore, Fox News continued to do this and become worse and worse.
Okay.
I don't think if this news story will matter for them. I don't know. I
Okay.
have no answer for
Hmm.
that. I mean, I have no insight into that, to
Okay.
be honest. Yeah.
Azania, you're a journalist. Have you been in a television newsroom, and what's just your whole take on the whole thing?
Haven't been in a TV newsroom, but I mean, like not the Economist, other newsrooms that I did small stints in, you can see very clearly that it is important that you match the agenda of your, reader or your viewer, because otherwise you're like, then, they'll pick up something else. Like,
Hmm.
यहाँ पे
Hmm.
UK, you have this concept of a free sheet. So what a
Yeah.
free sheet is कि वो तुमको ना रेलवे स्टेशन में मुफ्त में मिलता है. So
Hmm.
Okay.
it's like वो news से subscription model नहीं है, right? So they're getting money off the ads that they're selling. So, Tesco or like, a McDonald's will take an ad out, and then that's how the main revenue is earning. So you need to show that so many people are picking up my paper. And
Hmm.
if it is a right wingish paper,
Hmm.
and then you need to be like, yeah, strikes are horrible. Rishi
Hmm.
Sunak is the best, and kind of like, yeah, that sort of thing you have to do.
Yeah.
But and as a journalist, you're pretty much like confused about what's happening, because you're like, this is not sitting well with my ethics.
Hmm.
But also, I mean, you have bills to pay, and you don't need the paper to tank either, right? So it kind of becomes slightly complicated. I mean, and also, but the US situation is like far more toxic, right? Wahan pe
Hmm.
the culture wars are like, they're violent, like, truly, like it is some weird, bizarre, angry sort of thing. So I can actually see like viewers being like, they are like, doing some sort of massive betrayal of our cause, and
Hmm.
wearing their tinfoil hats, and then just like actually like having a mass exodus out of a platform, because that seems to have been the tone of all these sort of, extreme right wing sort of American politics, and that's been becoming pretty common, across board in
Hmm.
the US.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And this thing that you said about respecting your viewers, there was this correspondent of Fox, White House correspondent of Fox, when this whole election lie thing was happening and Dominion was accused. She actually fact checked it.
Hmm.
And from her personal handle, she said that actually Dominion has denied this statement or something to that effect. She did. The executives of Fox News basically pulled her up. They told her ki stop doing this because you need to learn how to respect our viewers. Again, the same logic which Zania
Right.
just gave.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
one journalist who was trying to just say that no, they have denied this, uh, basically got her into trouble as well.
Right. So there is
Mhm.
no objective pursuit of truth anymore. It's just
There
you
isn't.
have a network, you have your audience, you cater to your
Yeah,
audience.
that's the whole thing, and that is the whole logic that applies to India also.
Exactly. I was gonna come to
Yeah,
Yeah.
that. That
yeah.
like I refuse to believe a lot of these anchors, the kind of stuff they spout on air
Mm,
at prime time. I'm sure some of them maybe believe this kind of ideology,
mm,
but like for example, let's say the Sushant Singh case, right? I refuse to believe that ye padhe likhe log who know how things happen, who
mm,
know depression is a real thing, suicides happen, they, despite knowing all of that, still went on air and kept saying drugs and this and that and all of
mm.
that, right? So I think the whole concept of believing something in behind when the cameras are off and saying something when the cameras, it's a performance, right?
It is a performance, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's becoming more and more common, and I think the the audience drinks it up so much that
Mm.
no matter I may sound cynical, but doesn't matter the amount of exposes, they'll believe they've drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, even with Fox News, for example, they have
Yeah. Yeah.
$1.6 billion that
Yeah.
they have to potentially
Right.
pay. So, like 2 weeks ago, I mean, it has been happening for I think a while now. February mein shuru ho gaya tha. Uh, you would expect that with this big of a revelation,
Hmm.
that Fox News might improve itself or change. In an ideal world, they'll be like, shit, thoda hum zyada kar liye. तो अब थोड़ा हम कम करना चाहिए, मतलब हाँ ठीक है, हम फिर भी वी विल केटर टू ऑडियंस, बट इतना एक्सट्रीम नहीं जाते. नो, ये like last week they basically platformed Marjorie Taylor Greene,
Right.
another very kooky character in the
Mm.
USA. You know what she's been asking? She's been asking for red and blue states in America to be separated and divorced.
Oh
Yeah,
God.
Okay.
yeah. She's been saying that blue states of America and red states of America should be separated and become different countries or something. And Fox News let her on. Sean Hannity, the same guy who is cursing कि oh
Yeah.
ये क्या
Yeah.
nutty है. Abhi, if you look at their internal text right now, he must be saying the same about Marjorie Taylor
Yeah.
Greene, but he will not improve. He will not say these things.
There was also I think Tucker Carlson 2 or 3 days ago did a show where he cherry picked the footage from the January 6th insurrection,
Oh yes,
and he was like, "They are not
they
rioters.
are not writers. Yeah.
They were just looking around. They were
Yeah.
tourists.
Like there was, he was something like, oh, the police officers who were also there
Yeah,
were
yeah,
planted
were planted.
or
Yeah,
something like that. With ridiculous stuff happening.
correct.
I mean,
Um,
kind of becomes like this sort of question of like, when you're platforming someone, are you like, I mean, of course, in the case of Fox News, it's very whole different complication. But, are you supporting everyone you platform? No, because then that is a whole different sort of, kya bolte hain, wormhole to go down. Ki,
yeah.
But
because I
we
mean,
have
yeah, like,
sadhus and Maulvis on news channels all the time.
exactly. Like,
Yeah.
matlab, like, truly, I mean, I was just thinking about this whole fiasco that happened, I think, a year or 2 years ago, because, you said, I can't believe that people actually, and
Believe
I
what they say.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, because I mean, I think this was 2020, 2021, all the
Mhm.
pandemic years are one big blur. I
Yeah.
was at Oxford at that point, and I don't know if y'all remember, there was this whole scandal with the first Oxford Student Union Indian girl president who got kicked out, and then it became a whole stir up about Hindu phobia.
Oh, really? No, I don't
I
remember
don't
Yeah,
this.
remember
yeah,
this
no, it was
either. Yeah.
I mean, it was basically student politics gone
Mhm.
wrong. Like,
Hmm.
because student politics in Oxford are dirty.
Mm.
Like, they are like a whole
Like
different level of
JNU.
dirt. Gross. Like,
Yeah.
just, imagine that, but like, stickier, whiter, more racist, more
Of
problematic,
course.
everything
Yeah, yeah,
wrong,
yeah.
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
most postgraduates don't even touch it with like a stick. They're like, iske to dur
right.
hi rehna hai, undergrads ko
Hmm.
karne do jo kar rahe hain.
Hmm.
This, like, it's very gross, right? So
Yeah.
this girl, Indian girl called Rashmi, she'd run for elections, and total underdog, by fluke she won, right? She
Okay.
won
Okay.
president, because also
Mm.
everyone was so like done, and she was
Hmm.
the only candidate who was a post grad, she was the only candidate who was, desi. So
Mm.
everyone was just like, and Indians and Pakistanis will vote for the desi
Of
candidate
course.
simply
Yeah,
Yeah.
because of
yeah,
the
yeah.
fact that tab unity aata hai. She
Mhm.
won by a
Yeah.
massive margin.
Mm.
That wasn't the end of that, right? Because someone went to her Instagram and 5-6 साल पुराना कुछ तो post निकाला, some other opponent party posted it and said she's anti-Semitic, she's transphobic.
Hmm.
Now, both things not true, simply because of the fact that she was like, when she posted those things which weren't even like utna bada, she posted
Mhm.
something from the Holocaust Memorial,
Mhm.
and she posted like, on this Women's Day, I wish all women and all trans women, a happy Women's Day.
Mhm.
And they
Oh.
were, and she's a 15-16-year-old Indian girl.
Yeah,
Mhm.
हमारी
yeah.
vocabulary में anti-Semitics वगैरह है ही नहीं. We don't even know
Right.
what
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
is. Till you
Mhm.
go, she got cancelled.
Mhm.
उसको जो भी advice उस time मिला बहुत बुरा मिला. Anyway, she ended up resigning, which would have been sad, and all of us were like, wow, this is horrible. 3 days later, she becomes a Hindutva icon.
Amazing.
Yeah, because
Whoa.
someone randomly has gone up to her parents' का Facebook page and finds that उनका ना जो Facebook profile होता है उसके अंदर जो क्या होता है frame होता है, that said एक ही नाम जय श्री राम, which is your classic middle-aged uncle auntie post.
Of course. Yeah,
Valid,
yeah,
happens
yeah.
all the time. And someone's like, yeah, of course, she is, because she's Hindu, she's been attacked. And she buys into it. And now she's like,
It's
yeah,
happening in Oxford.
yeah, yeah. All is happening in Oxford. The rest of her just like, what on earth is happening? She becomes this massive sort of Hindutva icon. She's like, yes, I'm here for Hindu rights matter. I was attacked because I'm Hindu. And you look at her Instagram
I
now
mean,
and you're
make
like,
hay while the
shit.
sun shines. Yeah.
And like, the embassy, someone brought it up in the Indian parliament that our students are being attacked for being Hindu in like premier UK institutions. And the rest of us like, what happened here? Times of India covered this. It was like a whole situation.
Uh,
And now this girl, right? She's brilliant. She's like this energy and sustainability scientist, scholarship
Oh
student,
my
and
god,
like,
that is
and
not
you're
what
like,
I expected.
yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. No, you're like, are you sure you believe all this, or you're just kind of like putting it up? No, because I had mutual friends with her, and I was like, are you serious? Like, are you? How have you actually gone from that to kind of like posting shit like, all those pancharwalas and all those
Mhm.
jihadis need to go? Like, I'm like, how do you transition from that to that? Right? Like,
Yeah,
it's
oh
intense,
wow.
yeah.
and you're like, do
There you
you
go.
believe this? And it's just like it's for the
This is like
audience.
this is like a microcosm of the Fox News story
Exactly. Yeah,
only.
yeah,
Now, like,
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, it's crazy. But so essentially, even if she's putting up a front, even if again,
Yeah,
yeah. Hmm.
we
whatever it
don't
is,
know.
we
Yeah.
don't know. Like, क्या बात है? मतलब like maybe चाहिए अखंड भारत
Yeah.
उसको. So like like if even if she's putting up a front, the point is that there are people out there who will believe that front
Yeah.
and use it for their own
Yeah.
purposes,
And
like, or
exactly.
which is social validation, maybe getting a better job, maybe, like, or just going up in the power structure, maybe.
Right.
I think that is the same logic that applies to Fox News also, because
Yeah.
the reason is that if you believe in this one, which is ridiculous belief system, that the election is stolen, you are essentially continuing to be in power then in your head.
Exactly.
It's like, हाँ हम ही तो जीते इलेक्शन, मतलब क्या
Yeah,
बात
and
है
you're
There was
gonna
a
find people who'll
Yeah,
say
there
the
was that
same thing,
whole
right?
thing where a record number of people tuned into the Biden swearing in ceremony,
Uh-huh.
because there was this QAnon conspiracy that while the swearing in
Yes,
ceremony is happening,
I
Q
was
will come
I was
and
following that. Yeah,
arrest all these people who
yeah,
are child
yeah.
traffickers and everything.
Arey, JFK Jr. Basically, so that street where JFK was killed or
Assassinated.
something,
Yeah, yeah,
assassinated, he was going to show up on Biden's swearing in ceremony with the military
yeah,
Oh
on that
God.
street, lead the military to cancel Biden, maybe from his life,
yeah,
and then essentially uh, take over the government
yeah,
and reveal
mm,
himself as the
mm,
true president
mm,
of America.
yeah,
And he will say that
So
Trump was
drama.
my man all along,
yeah.
that he was a front that I was controlling, and I am the real OG JFK Jr. person who
Again,
is
this is all
basically.
crazy. Okay, we are almost out of time, but I want to ask one last question, Meghnad, also because this is something you've covered. Do you think this affects advertisers for Fox News?
So for America, mein, there's this one thing that had happened, I think, with the Tucker Carlson show
Hmm.
only, and Sean Hannity show, where a bunch of advertisers had backed out
Okay.
of giving advertisement to Fox News,
Hmm.
because they had spread some lies, they had spread a lot of things. I think it happened during the same time when this was
Acha, okay.
underway, right?
Hmm.
There are a few activist organizations, even in the UK. There is a very popular activist organization, Stop Funding Hate. They
Mm-hmm.
are the ones who are basically identifying these advertisers and connecting the two and asking them, do you support these views, right? We try to do that in India as well,
Hmm.
with mild success,
Okay.
which is basically, if you are someone who is putting an ad on a show which is demonstrably
Right.
false news, misleading news, which is actually hurtful and harmful to the people and your viewers, then do you agree with this happening?
Hmm.
And why are you giving money to a program
Right.
that this is airing these sort of a thing?
Opinions are.
um Now, what you need to be very careful about when you do something like this is, again, when I say false, it has to be demonstrably false.
Right.
Like, we should have actually done our ground reporting to prove that it was false. Shouldn't be hearsay fighting
Yeah.
hearsay,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and therefore we can actually ask the advertisers for some
Hmm.
answers.
Hmm.
um what happens in India, at least I know, I don't know about America, but what happens in India is that the brands approach these ad agencies, and they basically have bought like blocks on news channels,
Mm-hmm.
and they
Okay.
just retrofit the brand according
Got
to
it.
that.
Ah,
So they don't essentially care where their
there.
advertisers are going, what program it's going on, etc., as long as they're getting
Hmm.
viewership,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So the slot is what is valuable wahan
Right.
pe. So I think it might be happening the same way in America, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
But in India, it hardly matters.
Hmm.
Must say that.
Right.
Hardly matters तुम क्या दिखा रहे हो TV पे, whatever. Unless you're anti-government, then it matters. If you're anti-government, then nobody will give you ads. if you are pro government, if you are pro culture, if you're pro everything, that is great and will not get into you into trouble, then it's all good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that was our episode this week. Thank you so much for that, Meghnad.
Yes.
Before we wrap up, Azania, where can people follow you on social media? Anything you want to plug? Please go ahead.
People can follow me on Instagram, which is Azania_Patel, and you can also follow me on Twitter, which is the same ID, so Azania_Patel. So I speak a lot of shit on those sites, so it's entertaining.
All right.
Yeah, I followed you on Twitter like 2 days ago, and I do find you entertaining. It's like
Thank
great.
you.
Yes.
Any upcoming stories we should be looking out for?
All things are in pipeline. Have an interesting story about Maldives coming up
Okay.
in April, which is
Mhm.
about why is Maldives so suspicious and what's like.
Offshore. Is it about offshore?
It's more about like dodgy politics, but yeah, like lots of dodgy money, dodgy
Nice.
Indian influences, dodgy Chinese
Mm,
influences, very, very spy thriller vibes.
nice.
So definitely that's a story I'm excited about. So that's coming
Yeah.
out with New Lines magazine in April. It is free to read online, so no
Okay.
paywalls. That's
Mm,
amazing. And I have a article on ghost stories, if that's something that's interesting to you, coming
mm,
out with the Brown History newsletter sometime soon. So
nice.
Nice.
fun times. But
All
yeah,
right.
all will be shared.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Meghnad. Where can I
Thank
follow you?
you.
And anything you want to plug?
You can follow me on Twitter at me Meghnad. You can follow me on Instagram on Meghnades.
Mhm.
And you can follow me on my YouTube, Meghnerd, Meghnerd. And you can follow my other shows, Explain Like I'm 10, which have featured Akar Patel in the last one, and also How to Citizen, which was Priyanka Chaturvedi is the latest episode. And even the next one is very fun. I'm not
Mm.
revealing, but
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. All right. And you can follow me on Twitter at Abbas Momin and Abbas Momin88 on Instagram. One last time, if you liked what you saw, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, press the bell icon so that you know whenever new episodes of our shows drop. And if you're listening to us on an audio platform, rate and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Thank you
Hmm.
so much, Azania, for joining us early,
Abbas,
early
Thank
in the
you.
morning. Yes.
before we end, did you know you made a mistake while correcting your mistake?
What was the mistake?
Yeah, there was you said that Haryana is a district or something. I
And
think
I corrected it.
and
No, I said it was Rajasthan, and in correction, I said it's
you said
Haryana.
Haryana is a district of Rajasthan or something. Maybe it was a slip of tongue, but yeah, I mean, I just wanted to point out that
Oh,
we read
I
the comments.
apologize.
So please
I
leave a comment. Yeah.
apologize for my correction, and thanks to people who corrected my correction. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay,
Thank
all
you.
right. Thank you
Bye
so
bye.
much, guys. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you all next week. Bye bye.